Welcome everyone to a very special DVIC Masterclass. We're actually here live in an in-person masterclass with a live audience, which is unusual for us. So I'd like to introduce my panel today that I have to chat to. I'm quite excited about this. We've got Vincent McBurney. Vincent, why don't you introduce yourself and then I'll embellish.
So I work at MLC Insurance on the EDW team, and we've been building a data vault for about 5 years now, and I've been doing data vault modeling and data vault training for over 15 years now.
Vincent was actually the person that introduced me to the concept of Data Vault.
Yes.
And I remember that involved rolling out a very large piece of paper and saying, look how cool this model is. And I didn't understand what I was looking at. But also you've been a Data Vault trainer for many years as well. So as far as masterclass goes, we've got one of the gurus in the room, so that's cool. And the other guru in the room, Alex, why don't you introduce yourself?
I will. Hi all. I'm Alex, so I'm a principal consultant at Ignition Data. So I work alongside Jules. I guess if you're not aware of Ignition, we are a Data Vault consultancy delivering Data Vault projects, and more recently looking at kind of data platform, modern data platform implementations. Obviously, now that we have the guru here, I'm going to have to be very careful with what I say. I'm going to get graded down. But hopefully, we'll have something good and fun to talk about.
Yeah. Well, to add to that as well, Alex has been one of the key points of design around our approach to lake houses and how Data Vault applies to that, and how Data Vault can be applied to the delivery of data products. That's right. Which is an amazingly popular topic. I experienced yesterday at a round table where we had a limit of 15 and ended up with about 25 people sitting around the table.
So that's a lot of questions.
So it is, it's a very interesting topic. I think there's a lot of people that are interested in that. So probably more on that and Launchpad later on. But we've got a series of questions to go through, guys, and hopefully it'll spark some conversation. So question number one, I need to do a data migration for an application upgrade. And I also need to deliver an integrated data set to the business for analytics. What recommendations can you give me about building a platform that can deliver on both use cases? So any thoughts? Let's start with you, Vinny.
So when you're doing data migrations, you've got a lot of the same challenges as the EDW. You're trying to wrangle a lot of data from different source systems, connect it together and transform it. If I was going to use kind of those data vault techniques for data migration, I aim to get all of the data into a data vault as quickly as possible, because Data Vault's very good at loading 100% of your data into various time series satellites, and then you work out how to connect it together through your business keys, including keys across systems. So you can get to a point where all the data in scope for migration is available on the platform very quickly, and then you can write your migration rules on top of that. And those migration rules can focus on what the data should look like today. And then using like Data Vault techniques like pointing timetables, you can make those rules travel back in time to backfill that what the data should look like at previous points in time. Yeah. And if you like, generate current data for migration, or generate a history of change to that data over time to also be migrated. So your target application has not just all your current data, but migrated history of data as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like an archive.
Yeah, I guess. And then when you're finished, you've potentially taken a certain subset of the data into your new application, and you might have archived some others.
Yeah.
Your Data Vault can become your permanent strategic archive, or your the archive you need to keep copy that data around forever in case you're subject to legal. You need to bring it up for legal discovery, or just to have access to data that's no longer in your current applications. Your platform, your Data Vault becomes a very useful way to go back and see what the data looked like from those applications that you've now turned off.
Yeah, it's quite handy in decommissioning.
So, I think that's quite interesting. Kind of following on from what you're saying, I was trying to have a think about this earlier, and I think there's, as with everything, it always depends, right? That's what every answer kind of starts off at. But if you're looking at one source system migrating into one other source system, sometimes that kind of single one-to-one mapping can be, well, easy or not, it's a different question, but relatively easy to kind of see. But what I was thinking was, let's say you have 4 different source systems, right? Just 4, and you're migrating all 4 into one new system that you're going to use as of day some point in the future. What I was thinking was, using Data Vault to kind of bring those 4 systems together, have that integration going on. Whatever business rules, all of that goes on, and all the benefits of Data Vault, and be able to kind of maybe even jig around, play around with your business rules to get it to fit into your new source system whenever you're ready. But at the same time, you've got your 4 source systems, and maybe as a part of your kind of tech team, you've got to decommission them slowly over periods. So therefore, you're going to have one that comes undone, but the other 3 are still running, and you're constantly collecting this data and kind of bringing it together into one before you push. I think that could be quite an interesting way of using Data Vault to migrate several systems into one new one.
And one customer we have that's using it more, I guess, as a platform to do one application at a time, all into one new application. So there's a series of systems that all the data in those need to eventually land in this one new replacement for all of them. So they're using it that way. Would you do it for just a single app? It doesn't make sense, really. You can do straight mapping for a single migration of a single platform to its a new version or an alternative.
Yeah, I think it works well when you have several source systems.
Yeah.
And like that idea of switching them off slowly. What I also like is, if you would take it a step further, that kind of IM concept maybe, whereby you're creating these throwaway views and you can constantly tweak them to get them to work to fit to your new source, your new migrated system. And it gives you that opportunity to try a few things out to get it to work. Because I find most of the time with these kind of large migration projects, it's a real big bang approach. And if you get it wrong, that rollback to have to get everything fixed. In this instance, maybe you don't need to worry about that too much. As long as you're integrating things nicely, your business vault, your IM, you've got a way of massaging that data into the new system, or have several different goes at it without having to, wait for that big.
Well, we've got a question from the audience.
Thank you. Yes. For some migrations can be quite complex and iterative. You have to go through a number of times. Additionally, in a migration, you might choose a certain strategy that says I've got to do a whole backlog of data, or I've got to do it function by function. Can you provide some advantages to using Data Vault to overcome those kinds of challenges?
Yeah, so the best thing about the Data Vault is the Data Vault itself probably won't change throughout the migration, because it loads original raw records as they looked in the source system. So you'll find on those complicated migrations that the Data Vault will be populated very early in the project, and that will keep loading and keep the data synced and up to date, and you'll very rarely go back to it. Most of your change are in what we call the soft business rules, the ones that need a lot of tweaking and rewriting, that sit on top of the Data Vault and create the data sets to go into the target app. You can rewrite those hundreds of times over on top of your Data Vault. Data Vault's got techniques like pointing timetables where that SQL's highly optimized. So it's not unusual to do dozens of versions of business rules in a sprint and immediately see the results through views until the data is looking exactly like the way you want it to look, and then release that as a migration run into the target application.
And lots of vendors of applications say, give us your data in this format, nicely avoiding any obligation to deal with the hard work, the mapping the data or data quality or anything. So really those views would just be essentially representations of those file layouts that they're expecting.
And your comment around being able to archive all of that, I think is helpful as well. At some point down the line, you're questioning why surnames and first names have been put back to front.
Yeah.
Off you go and double check that, how it started.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right, we're going to move on. That was a good question. Thanks, guys. Well, I asked the question. Thanks for the answers. Okay, so what advice would you give about adding capability or support for generative AI use cases to an existing data platform?
Yeah, well, we've basically set up a system where kind of the AI team are one of our customers of the EDW. So the EDW has a raw vault. It brings data from all disparate systems together. It works out how to connect them and even how to create a single view. So the AI team come to us for data that's already been transformed or wrangled.
Yeah.
Or they come to us if they specifically want a range of history. So sometimes AI will say, we need 90 days of change over time. Yeah. Can you give us that exact record set? We can pull that out of the raw vault satellites. or sometimes they say, just give us the fully transformed single view. We can give them that, and they can bring back to us any of the interesting outputs of AI, like customer churn scores, that we can put into our information marts.
Yep.
But basically, you don't want two different teams to be spending the same money doing the same data wrangling and solving the same problems on how to join data together from different systems. You want to do it once, and do that once and share that data across both teams.
So that's like a business vault use case. So you're basically sourcing from the warehouse, running some type of rule or highly complex analytics, and coming up with a result like churn maybe, and loading that back into the warehouse.
Yeah.
I assume you use business vault tables for that data.
Well, AI teams tend to like raw vault because it's got more attributes.
But where you land the results, would you consider that a business vault? Or?
Yeah, basically, we just have a presentation layer where we send data sets off.
Yep.
But if it's virtual, then there'll be just a database views for the AI team, where they can come and get their slice of data out of their views.
So, Alex, when we think about Gen AI, which is starting to look at unstructured data sets, and I know this is a bit on what you've been doing with Launchpad and looking at how kind of a more, a lakehouse architecture might support different types. What are your thoughts?
So in terms of getting your platform ready for AI, which is what I mean, it's a hard one because do you get your platform ready for AI, or do you wait for a need to kind of propose itself, right? Do you design hoping that you'll eventually answer a question? I don't know at the moment. I think if you take the platform itself, the side of that out of it, and you look at maybe the metadata side, the governance side, the cataloging and so forth, that probably is as important as the technical side, I would have thought, to be able to offer up a way to search for data so that maybe kind of business questions or kind of innovation can happen from the other end a little bit easier. And then, of course, there's that interaction. Look, this is the kind of data I need more of this, more of that, and then finding a solution to be able to put that out there as some sort of a product for your data science team to look at. That might be a kind of a different way to look at it. I guess in our field, we tend to have to wait for that AI question to come first, and then we build around it. But I've never actually been on the other side of it and go, okay, do what now that I can start from a blank slate? What do I plan for first?
And and that's value-driven architecture type. Like wait until you actually have the use case and then build either capability or support for that. But
I think that kind of goes to speak, about maybe creating more of a modular approach to delivering your project.
But on the flip side to that, you've got lakehouse platforms like Databricks and Watson-X that are now giving you this, content store and the ability to deploy vector databases and other things for large language model support. So the capability is kind of there. But you wait for the use case and then say, all right, well, what do we need this set of documents to be loaded in and turned into that?
And maybe part of solving that problem would be, at the end of the day, you've got data science sat over there. They want data. They want access to data. Our job maybe is to get that data to them as quick as possible. And therefore, what is the framework that my platform sits on that allows data to go from source to the data scientist team as quickly as possible? How do I integrate that? Bang, bang, bang through. Here you go.
All right. So building on from that, then what additional governance considerations should there be when you're building AI use cases, as opposed to or on top of traditional analytics?
Yes.
I don't think governance changes whether you're looking at it at a non-AI driven platform or an AI driven platform, right? At the end of the day, should you see something? Yes or no? Should that be available? Yes or no? Should we be hiding something or not? Yes or no? I think that's always going to be there. I think what's changing now is governance on data that's structured and tabular is easy. When I say easy, it's easy to switch something on and off. We're now looking at the other side of data, and what we're now really interested in is that unstructured side. How do we take that unstructured side and add governance on top of that? If we're looking at trying to, run document search, vector database on top, should you be able to go through that first and redact names in documents, and therefore have several versions of that document search available, so that maybe if you're just us sat here, we can't see any names, but maybe our compliance officer, he has a different level of, governance access, compliance access, and maybe he can access it differently. And maybe kind of thinking about it at different levels of that unstructured side would be probably where I start looking.
It's an interesting bit. Any thoughts, Vinny?
Yeah, well, I actually think governance is quite different in AI. I think it's more like in data governance on our EDW is all about the traditional problems of data quality and data classification and making sure the right people can see the data. When we move to AI, there's almost like an AI governance about the ethics of how you're using AI, and if you're using it correctly, or if there are any unintended consequences of how you're using it, and almost the business implications of that AI being used to make decisions about what impact does that have on customers, what impact does that have on revenue. So it's almost it's a more complicated. AI governance is more complicated.
Yeah, there's definitely that ethics side of it as well, and the unintended, because the business is on the line, right? Your reputation's based on the answers you provide your customers or the support or whatever else. So one thing I was thinking though is that AI, these new AI approaches and all these large language agents and stuff give you a way to kind of build a governance structure into that as well, to architect it so that there is QA and review and those sorts of things where you have one agent monitoring the answers of another. Have you guys seen that stuff yet?
Oh, that's just isn't that one of those forever loops?
It is kind of. I mean, I noticed.
Question.
I did notice there's a number of where papers have been presented about creating effectively a little software development team of large language model agents.
When you say that,
I'm not going to make you do it. But there is an opportunity in a way to put in guardrails that come with the AI platforms, and also extra review cycles that use AI to do the review cycle. But it's almost like having independent agents check the results.
I think that's quite interesting, that concept of reviewing AI. It's all very, unless it's obviously wrong, that kind of grey area is actually quite big.
Yeah.
Whether I think it's wrong
it's
versus whether you think it's wrong.
Well, it's usually like data quality, but more complicated. Data quality is this is my raw data and this is the data I put in the report. How did it get there and why was it better or worse? AI is how did you come up with that decision? But you can't as clearly see the before and after data.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So you've got to almost have a way of working out how to explain the inner workings of AI to your business users.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. And we've got a team at the moment playing around using AI to generate code for data quality checks. That's cool, but is it right? Because it's your data quality check. Did we have a question from the audience?
You answered the question. Sorry.
Okay.
The question was going to be, how do you validate data that's produced by?
Yeah.
And that's hard because usually you can only check it with AI.
Yeah.
Because AI has done something that you couldn't do.
There is a black box element, which I think, to your point, is why the ethics is really important. All right, going to move on because that is a rabbit hole we could be going around and around in. All right, Alex, this one's going to be to start with you because I know this is your one of your areas of interest. So do you have any thoughts on the role of data products play in a modern data platform? Are they for reporting? Are they for sharing? Are they for both? How do you work that out, and how do you manage them over time?
I think that's a good question. This is one we probably argue over all the time.
Yes, we do.
We've just brought that to the
we've brought that to the
internet.
Yeah.
But my view of data products, it's a little bit of a topic that a lot of people have been talking about, I think, recently, and I'm a fan of it. I'm a fan of it because I see data products as two distinct areas. I don't. You could argue that a report, a dashboard, is a data product. I, however, would probably not say that. I prefer to see data products as something a little more simple. Let's just, for argument's sake, call it a table of data of some sort. And the reason I like that is because I think data products need to be owned by the business. And I think you need to look at it from the business side. I want somebody to champion this data set, to own it, to understand it, to sell it to the wider audience. And in order for me to get business engagement, which is what we want with everything I know, but I think it needs to be as simple as possible. And having a large complex data model and various reports and dashboards, I don't know if anybody wants to really own that isn't on the technical side.
Mm.
And then you potentially over time lose that kind of business engagement. I think Data Vault should be simple. And those owners could be a data science who owns a feature set that wants to share that around different other data science teams, potentially. It could be anything. But yeah.
So you think about it as from the purpose of how hard will it be to govern it and get ownership of it?
I think so.
Another way to think of it is what's its use?
Yes.
Is it for sharing with other technical users or BAs or whatever, or is it for sharing with non-technical users, like business users that are wanting to just maybe do a Power BI dashboard?
Yeah.
On top, so, Vinny, any thoughts on that? Are you using the concept of data products in MLC?
Well, we've got Power BI for reporting.
Yep.
We've got some data governance tools. So we have data quality scorecarding and a catalog and a business glossary.
Yep.
In terms of data transformation, we've actually we've got some in ETL and some in raw SQL. And what my preference now, after wrangling this data for about 5 years, what's worked best is getting the data into a vault pretty much as it looks in the source system, and then writing all the complicated business rules in SQL. Because we're on Snowflake, we can write all the business rules in SQL and test them in a shadow production environment and see the results straight away. Yeah. So I can write a complicated business rule and see how it runs on like 5 million policies in under a minute and see the results straight away. And then I can find out what's wrong with those rules or what's non-compliant data. I can tweak the rule and see if that's fixed it again in under a minute.
Yeah.
And in the old days of ETL and different environments, I would have been waiting, I would have to wait for the ETL job to finish, or I'd be in a lower environment against non-development development data. But most of our complicated business rules are handling production data that changes over time and handling changes to that data over time. So we really needed, for a lot of our most complicated rules and testing, we needed a shadow production.
Yeah.
And we needed to have layers of views and virtual rules or rules in SQL because we needed to see if those rules were successful as quickly as possible.
So do you see, for you, is the data ownership sits with the data warehouse team, or do you try and get data ownership at the business level?
Well, yeah, we have data ownership at the business level. They're more focused on their own business functions.
Yeah.
So they don't own data in our warehouse necessarily.
Right.
They own the source of the data and a lot of the rules.
So if someone was coming looking for a data set to access, they would come to the warehouse team rather than a data product that's owned by a division of the business or.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to create an enterprise data layer where you can come and get the main assets in life insurance. It's policy and policy cover.
Yep.
You can come to the warehouse and get a single view of that.
Yeah.
Or come and go to the BI portal and get a report on it. Get it in a dashboard format.
So how do you do that? What's your way of sharing? Let's just call it policies because that was the last thing you mentioned.
Yeah.
How do you share that with the business? Is it always up in the portal as a list that you can access, or have you got a way that?
Well, for the widest number of users, they'll come into Power BI and find reports that they're looking for: claims reporting, churn reporting, policy reporting, whatever dashboard
reports and dashboards
they'll go through a catalogue of BI assets.
Yeah. Okay.
If they're self-service data users, they want data sets, like some actuaries like having actual data sets.
Yeah.
They'll go browse through our presentation layer, look at our data marts, or they'll browse through our enterprise data layer and see what data sets are available. Whether they want to get it out of a dimensional model where the joining between the tables is easier, or they want to go to the enterprise model because they want to get as many attributes as they can.
So they'll have access to the underlying semantic.
Yeah. And then some users want to go all the way back to the raw data.
Okay.
Back to raw vault. That's a bit trickier because you have to be able to write SQL against raw vault. So we have views of what it currently looks like, but you have to be quite good at writing SQL to get data out of a raw vault.
And how would they know what data they need? I know that sounds a bit.
Well, we always start with the easiest data, the data
Yeah.
that's easiest to use. So we would always say, go to our presentation layer, go to our marks.
Okay, so
See if you can get everything you need off
okay.
the marks.
Okay.
Because that's the most user-friendly version of data.
So it's very much a kind of a center of excellence style structure that you're running, rather than a kind of a distributed data mesh style kind of multiple data teams. Which I think there's a really good argument of which one works best. So, all right, going to move on. Last question I have for today. So we're seeing more another Gen AI question. Seeing more Gen AI options for SQL code. Where do you see this being useful in a data management project? So generating SQL, I guess. So business rules, data classification, data quality rules. I know we're playing around with data quality rules at the moment. Have you guys played around with generating code with any of the like ChatGPT or any of these other tools yet?
Well, for structured data, we've used the type of profiling and classification tools to try and determine what the nature of every column is, and they go out and try and find classified data and flag those fields as classified. So that's generally the kind of pattern matching profiling tools. We haven't really generated SQL. It'd be nice to be able to generate all our SQL for our raw vault, but you can't really generate SQL for our enterprise layer. You could certainly generate SQL for information marks. That would be a cool idea, because most of them follow certain industry patterns about how you show history over time and what type of fact tables you have. So I could see a place for generating reporting objects on demand, almost, to say, turn this data into our facts, and then collect a whole bunch of dimensions around it.
So asking what you want to see and have the tool generate the code underneath to go and do that.
And if you had an enterprise data layer, it could go back to where the joins between the data sets are fairly well documented. Then I could see AI helping users create their own on-demand marks.
Yeah, Alex, have you played around with this at all?
Yeah, I guess there's maybe two parts of that. There's a part where you're using it to create code. That can be useful. Some of my friends, obviously I haven't. Some of my friends may have, given it a go to start code and start typing away and create Python scripts and so forth, and give you a placeholder to start. Although what I did see recently was Databricks released SQL Gen AI functions. I don't know if you've heard of that. So you literally get a set of functions that query an underlying LLM, and you kind of feed it an answer as you go along. So it would be somewhere along the lines of, select from a table a column of text, then you run that function next to it, and it gives you, I think they've got a list of early kind of functions, and it gives you a list of sentiment values, good, bad. And the example they were using was like in the call center, as you've got this script, there's being automatically written down into a database somewhere. You could very quickly as a manager on that floor just go select, blah, 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 run the function over there, and here it is, good, bad, bad. Okay, well, let me look into that, which I thought was quite interesting. I'm not sure if I have a further use case for that, but it's kind of code within code within code.
Well, I know some of our developers on the other side of the business have already tried building functioning pieces of software with the code generated by these tools.
Yeah.
And while it produces, pretty good code, there was obviously a process of reviewing and debugging and whatever else, but it worked. Was it? It's not snap fingers and you have a new piece of software, but it's only going to get better, I guess.
And I think that's it. We're at the early stages of that, aren't we? And right now, would you trust everything? Probably not. You probably want to just run your eye over it.
Yeah.
Get things to fudge things a bit to get it to work for your use case. But would I be surprised at some point if, you just tell it to do it for you?
Yeah.
No, that was you don't think that'll ever come to case?
Thoughts? You think you will ever get there?
Yeah.
yeah. It's coming. The robots are coming.
Yeah, they are.
All right. On that gloomy note, we're going to wrap it up. All right. That was almost very Jeremy Clarkson-ish, wasn't it, on that bombshell? All right. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next DVIC. Obviously, if you watching this on YouTube, go and join the DVIC portal for lots more content. Or if you're on LinkedIn, join the LinkedIn group as well. And thanks for joining. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, that.